Hello friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the Audiophiliac, and today's message is high-end audio isn't as expensive as it might seem. Yeah, just let that sink in for a little bit, right? High-end, yeah, there's crazy expensive audio like $100,000 turntables and $10,000 interconnects. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real-world stuff. You know, like Bowers and Wilkins. Look at this comment a viewer sent in. He bought a pair of B&W 803 S2s 27 years ago for $3,500 Canadian. He still has them. He still enjoys them. He'll probably have them for another 10 years or so. So he figured out at this point, at 27 years in, his cost is $130 per year. That's real world, right? Now, of course, he had to lay down the money in the first place. But the point of today's rant is if you choose wisely, if you buy products from companies that have a track record for sticking around and providing good service, having decades-long pleasure from your system is not out of the ordinary. But like I said, you got to choose wisely. I mean, you pick companies like Macintosh or Zoo, or Vandersteen, companies that have been around, or Bowers and Wilkins, yeah, they're going to do it for you, right? Now, when I'm talking about speakers, I'm going to cover a lot of different parts of the system. I'm talking mostly about passive speakers, With active speakers, I'm not so sure, But there is the case to be made for Meridian. Now, Meridian, known mostly for their DACs, also makes speakers, and they've been making active speakers since, like 1977 with the M1. Now, if you happen to have that speaker, please tell us in the comments about it. They also started making DSP speakers in 1991. That's 31 years ago. If you have a pair of those, D6000s, I'd like to hear from you, because it's 31 years old, it's active, it has digital technology from 30 years ago. How is that working out for you? I want to know. I think we want to know. Yeah, so with passive speakers, it's reasonable to expect a speaker will last you 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or even longer. Now, of course, you got to lay down the money in the first place. And it might make sense to buy in your system, in your whole system approach here, to buy some components that will be intermediate on your way to your goal of having a system that settles in and you can live with this thing and not think about buying any more audio. Now, remember, it's coming from me, Steve Guttenberg, and I talk about new stuff all the time, right? How about this? What about that? Well, yeah, because that's my job, is to tell you about what's happening. But for you, the consumer, it might make sense, if you have the right, let's say, personality for it, to figure out the system that you want. Now, you can't do this from day one. This would be if you're an experienced audiophile and you've been around the block. You kind of know where you're going. You know what your taste is. You can get a sense of, I'm going to be happy with this and not need to change it. And then make a sizable investment because you know that it's going to last a very, very long time. But I first want to talk about turntables. Now, I mentioned my friend Gene a number of times on this channel. He has a Linn turntable, a Linn LP12, that he bought in the 70s, and he still has it, and he still loves it, and he plays records all the time on it. So turntables, Linns and other good turntables, have very long lifespans, and those are belt drive turntables. And as some of you have noticed, I'm now using direct drive Technics direct drive turntables. And when I started talking about Technics, people in the comments just started popping up saying they've had Technics forever, since the 70s, right? When they started making direct drive turntables. So apparently, direct drive turntables can last a long, long time. So belt, direct drive, idler, I'm not so sure about, but yeah, there's people out there with vintage idler turntables that have been restored, and et cetera, and they're sticking around for 50 plus years. So yeah, turntables, yeah, buy a great turntable. If you already own, let's say, a sizable record collection, 1,000 LPs or more, or 500 LPs, whatever it is, and you love that music, and you're going to be playing that music for the rest of your life, as I am with my records, yeah, buying a turntable that's going to be there, it's really, really good, and you won't be tempted to change, yes, that makes sense. Oh, then there's the question of cartridges, phono cartridges. They probably won't last 30 years, or even 20, or I don't know, even 10 seems like a stretch. But anyway, again, if you buy from kind of like you bought, let's say, a Koetsu cartridge in the 80s and had it retipped a number of times by various people, that could get you into this decades-long relationship with the product. So great cartridges like Koetsu or Kaseki or Vandenhall, those are expensive cartridges, but they can be serviced and they can just keep going year after year. So even with something like a phono cartridge, it can be a long-term investment. So then, as for electronics, tube or solid state, long service life is pretty much, yeah, a given at this point. I mean, but some go above and beyond. Bryston, for example, offers a 20-year warranty. That's extraordinary. Macintosh offers service long after the warranty is expired. So does Audio Research. So do many of these companies. But as always, I definitely recommend checking with the company before you lay down your hard-earned cash to buy a piece of electronics about this exact question. Do they offer service beyond the warranty? And just a general idea of what prices are to service out-of-warranty products. So when it comes to digital, it's a little bit different because everybody knows that digital changes all the time, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of those changes, well, they certainly don't really affect me personally in terms of the way I listen to digital, which is, to be honest, most of it is 16-bit, 44.1 CD Redbook standard, and that would suit me just fine. Now, of course, if you're into the whole MQA thing and high res and all that, well, that's the field of digital that does change from year to year, and you can't have a long-haul investment in that, or you shouldn't, because it's going to change. But me and a lot of people, 44.1 16-bit will do, and if you have a 30-year-old Wadia DAC, or a 30-year-old, or 40-year, it could be 40 years old, Wadia or Theta or California Audio Labs or Meridian, you might be set right there. That might have been your wise investment back then. Or you could buy one now, a DAC, and imagine that you could live with this DAC for many, many decades. So I'm not ruling out DACs as part of this long-term strategy of invest in the right components and they will be there for you. Now when it comes to CD transports that are mechanical, that has a laser that can wear out and stuff, that's a little trickier. But some companies like the J's Audio CD transport that I use has a user replaceable laser mechanism, and many other companies do as well. So it's not impossible. What I'm saying here is it's not impossible, even with CD transports or CD players, to buy one that you could have for many, many decades. Here's my problem and my concern with active speakers is that they have amplifiers and sometimes DACs inside the cabinet. And down the road, working in that closed environment, there's more heat, they might wear out, they might just crap out for various reasons. How does that active speaker get serviced? You have to return the entire speaker or pair of speakers. It gets complicated. And remember too that chances are the company that made the speaker doesn't actually make the electronics. Those come usually from outside vendors. And yeah, within the warranty of a year or two or 3 or 4, they might be able to service it, probably will be able to service it. But what about 10 years down the road or 20 or 30 years down the road? I'd say you'd probably be out of luck if you needed to get your active speaker serviced. What about subwoofers? Subwoofers are, for the most part, active, same deal. Now, they've been active subwoofers out there in the audio universe for decades and decades. If you have a 30-year-old Velodyne subwoofer or a 40-year-old M&K subwoofer that's just been cooking along all these years, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Please let me know. Anybody that's got anything that I'm referring to that's, let's say, 10 years plus, share your experiences in the comments. I'd appreciate that. Okay, so the thing is, yeah, this stuff is expensive. The good stuff, the good high-end stuff is expensive. And I'm not saying that people should go out and buy an entire system and then stick with it for the rest of their life. It's usually one piece at a time. When I was in retail, a lot of my customers would buy one piece a year. One year they'd buy an amplifier, next year they'd buy a preamp, and they had intermediate products that kept them going. But in terms of their long-term goals, it was usually spaced out over years where they would buy their entire system. So that's one way to tackle this. Or buy used stuff that's vintage, that's already had some miles on it. That might be a way of getting over the hump of spending a lot of money on a high-end system. Because buying it used or vintage, yeah, you will save a lot of money going in. No doubt about it. And of course, do your homework before you pull the trigger, meaning contact the company, see how they are about servicing their older products, whatever it is, speakers, amps, DACs, transports, whatever. If you're plopping down thousands of dollars, think about it, ask around, but definitely contact the company in one form or another and see how they handle service. Okay, I think we have covered the bases here. High-end audio is expensive going in. The price going in is expensive, but when you amortize it over decades, it's not so crazy at all. And what else do people buy? Like the guy in the beginning that I referred to that has the 27-year-old B&W speakers. What else do people buy? What do consumers buy that lasts 27 or more years? Well, homes or apartments. Yes, they do. That's for sure. After you get past that, what do people buy that has a useful life of 20, 30, 40 years? And I'm not talking about products that you buy and you stick it on the shelf and look at it or something. No, that's not what I mean. It's stuff that you actively use day to day for decade after decade. And that's what makes high-end audio not such an insane investment as it might seem at first. Yes, high-end audio is the gift that keeps on giving. Let's just put it that way. And speaking of the gift that keeps on giving, it's now time for the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. This one comes from Hans Johan. He is in Sweden. He's running DIY three-way open baffle speakers with active crossovers. The mids and highs are driven by Creo, they're in quotes there, 8-watt solid-state Class A amps, which he says are Krell headphone amp clones. The woofers and subs are being driven by, quote, classic 150-watt Class AB amps. The passive preamp is by Lumley. Turntable is a Marantz TT15. The phono preamp, I'm going to mispronounce this badly. This is a Lenzhou Gaio 2.4. My apologies. CD transport is a TIAC T1 DAC Musical Paradise MPD2. He's using this system pretty much exclusively in near-field listening. And well, he started out with an 8-inch mid driver, but he felt something was missing, so we switched over to some 15-inch mids. And he says, once you live with a 15-inch mid-range, wow, there's no going back. That's really cool. Thanks. All right, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and yes, in case you were wondering, I am the Audiophiliac. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please consider joining my Patreon. It's patreon.com/audiophiliac. There's a link to it below, but that's what helps keep this channel going and growing year after year. You know, a few months ago, I started a podcast that has no commercials on it, by the way, and that's basically, I'm doing it for you patrons who are just keeping this thing alive. You can subscribe to my Patreon for a few dollars a month, up to $50 a month. The $50 a month patrons talk to me for 15 minutes every month at the beginning of the month. And some of my patrons have become friends. I've talked to them, 2 of them, for over 4 years. So it's really helped the channel. So anyway, yes, you can check out my podcast and you can listen to it on my website, and there is a link to that below. And you can also listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, iHeartRadio, the usual places where people hear podcasts. And in my closing remarks, I have one other request. If you like these videos that I do, please remember to hit the like button. The YouTube algorithm, this means something to the algorithm. It's not a person, it's not a thing, it's just the algorithm anyway, it's in the sky, it's out there, and I am beholden to the algorithm. So hit the button when you feel like I deserve a like. And if you have yet to subscribe, if you have yet to join the 214,000 subscribers, that's amazing to me, please subscribe right now. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.